thing as us now. So yeah, it's the most important.
Big. All right, you ready? Okay, let's do it. All right. Welcome everyone, those of you on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to Saved by the Bellerin, the Sports Talk Line video pod. I am your host, Raphael, joining you from the United States. Smaller UK contingent today. I'm joined with Dean, although we do expect Ryan to be popping in shortly. One of the vagaries of life, he is stuck in an Uber, so he's racing to get to us and join in the fun. It's Derby Day, as everybody knows. Tottenham Hotspur on looming before us. A match has suddenly become very, very important. 70 minutes into the Leicester match midweek, Arsenal look to be cruising to their fourth consecutive win, looking at possibly reeling in Leicester, who seem to be in free fall. And then, an unfortunate red card for Eddie Nketiah seemed to turn everything around. Arsenal went down a man, and then a few minutes later, were no longer up a goal, and they finished in a 1-1 draw, which really kind of ended their chances of catching Leicester and kind of revived a team that was wobbly. But looking at the results today, because we're all table watching, this game is always an important game, but now it takes on added significance in the chase for European football, because the two teams immediately above Arsenal, who enters play today in 8th place, Wolves and Sheffield United, both won their games this weekend comfortably. Wolves beat, who did they beat today? Gene, help me out here.
Wolves played, oh wow, okay, yeah.
They won 3-0, I know that much. And if you saw yesterday, Sheffield United put Everton, thank you. And Sheffield United yesterday put a 3-0 thrashing on Chelsea. So both of those teams are now 4 and 5 points respectively ahead of Arsenal when they start play, when the whistle goes. Also, if you look around us, Burnley has pulled even with Arsenal on points, and Tottenham is only 1 point behind Arsenal. So winning this game or losing this game, it could be the difference between staying 8th and staying right on the two teams ahead of you and still being very much in contention for 6th in European football, or should they lose this match, drop into 9th and be even with the team that's 10th with you on points. Very, very important. It's always important, Dean.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to look at it. As I said the other day, we need to not be sort of worrying too much about surrounding results, but obviously still paying attention to them. But I think the biggest thing for us to do at the minute, and the biggest thing for Mikel to tell his boys to do at the minute, is to sort of wear the blinkers, just focus on every match one by one. The Leicester game was quite unfortunate, to be where it is, for the result to be the way it was. Obviously, we were doing so well. It's still no defeats in that many games now. We haven't lost one yet since the Brighton game. But obviously the winning streak went. But we just got to focus and just keep it. I mean, we can still get 6th, I believe. I don't know how attainable top 4 is right now. But 6th, I feel we can still do, which for me will solidify a place somewhere in Europe.
Right. And it's, you mentioned that, and I want to talk about that. You bring up a good point. We're still 4 matches from the end of the season. We're looking at Arteta trying to keep things in perspective, even though the team is still sitting in 8th, and that's frustrating because that's not where, any of us feel the team should be. But I went back and I did some computations. I don't have it. I'm not going to put, I have a little, actually I could have a little board. You can see my little note board here, but anyway, low tech here for the moment. Anyway, I looked at the club's form before Arteta took over and since he took over. And, we were commenting upon this, and I'm sure other people have talked about this. Arsenal actually have fewer defeats this season than City. They have fewer defeats than Leicester. They have fewer defeats, I believe, than there's another team that's ahead of them in the table. I think United. And they're even on losses with with all the team, with the exception of Liverpool, Arsenal are competitive or actually have fewer defeats than several of the teams that are above them. But what has them sitting in eighth is that they lead the league in draws. They have 14 of them, and many of them came in the Unai Emery and the Freddie Ljungberg interim. The Arsenal's record when Mikel Arteta took over the club was 6 wins, 13 draws, 6 defeats. You put that in a calculator, they were winning 24% of the time, which is terrible. I remember doing a pod with Sam right before Emery was dismissed, and we said, this is the form of a relegation club. This is the record that you expect of a relegation club. This is not Arsenal football, all right? And then when Arteta took over, it was a continuation of the same, at least for the first 6 weeks or so. His first 7 matches, 1 win, 5 draws, 1 defeat, more of the same. And again, I remember, Dean, you and I did a pod together, and we'd accepted the fact that they were not going to make Europe. We were thinking, what do they do? Are they better off with no Thursday football? It's a chance to reset. Chelsea did it, Liverpool did it. Good summer, you can come back. But there was also weighing the downside. What happens when you lose these players? All right. Well, since then, since a 4-0 victory over Newcastle at the end of February, 6 wins, 1 draw, only 2 defeats. And those were the first 2 right out of the COVID break. So night and day in the form. That's the kind of Arsenal play. As you said, there's a run-in. So that's why I'm bullish on them in these last 4 matches. Yes, there are problems. Yes, they had the red card. But again, this is a different team. I mean, what can you point to, Dean? What changed after that Newcastle match that Arteta finally seemed? It took him about 7 matches to get the club to see it his way and to buy into his vision. But since then, they've been a very, very different club, much better.
Yeah, I think it's more about, I just want to point out, I've just seen a message in the chat. Actually, Ryan's on his way. I just want to say that he did put it in our chat there. I feel I don't know if it's about having to, I guess, convince the club to buy into his vision. I think they always knew he was capable of it, which is why he was chosen to replace Emery. Obviously, there was always them stories that it should have been him. At the time, it wasn't. I do feel we've benefited from him staying at City for that extra season, and that'll be for another pod to discuss that, I think. But when we had the not so great result, obviously on Boxing Day, his debut, we had that not so great result at the top end of the new year. But after that, we went on that massive unbeaten streak. But then, obviously, as you say, things did change between that situation with Newcastle in February, then when lockdown hit and the restart. I just feel it was more of a case that a lot of these players had to understand that as much as he is, Mikel Arteta, former player, friend of the club, he was also the manager. So I think there had to be some form of balance there. I think his change in personnel selection is obviously going a long way to show that. His change in system, he's obviously trying to initiate and implement his own style now. And obviously that will come later again, as we discussed, with some of his own players coming in. Going back to your article that he's cooking with another man's ingredients, I think he did his best, and I don't think it was flattering to deceive either. The unbeaten run with someone else's style, I guess. But it was about him bringing in his own style in training, his own system, his own format, and we've seen that with the current 3-4-3 formation. There was a lot of talk that 3 at the back or 5, if you will, is not going to suit Arsenal's style. When Emery tried it didn't seem to work very well. So I think it's just a case of him showing that he is, as much as being a mate, he is a boss, and he is the boss, and leaving certain people out, putting certain people in their place, I think is playing a big part to that. I am the man in charge, but I'm also, here if you need me. And I think that balance is what's key, and it's what shows a good manager.
Okay. And, I think also the couple of things that we've talked about before, this is a more fit squad. I know when he took over, he talked about this club wasn't ready, and we remember when they that first win in that stretch. I think it was his second match in charge or third match in charge when they beat Man United at the Emirates 2-0. And after the match, I think it was David Luiz who was saying, we love what the skipper's doing, but we're not ready yet. I think acknowledging that he took over a club that really wasn't prepared, not physically prepared. They were not up to 90 minutes of playing the way he wanted them to play. They seem to be very different now. Certainly after COVID, they don't seem to be lagging. We're not, gritting our teeth in the last 15 minutes of a match, hoping they can hold on if they have a lead. Where a lot of that, oh no, here we go again, is gone. But as you said, I think he's really been able to reach all these players on a personal level. And we see the value of his and his staff's better man management. We've talked about all these players who have risen. Xhaka, we've been talking about him for weeks. Mustafi, let's talk about Shkodran Mustafi. All of us wanted him to leave, right? We talked about that a little bit on the pod. He was probably the man all Arsenal fans love to hate. It seems there are always guys like that on the club. And at the beginning of the season, certainly up to the managerial changes, he was one of those guys. And now Mikel Arteta this last week was saying he wants him to stay. It seems that there's some disagreement, that the club maybe doesn't share his vision. I think he's going to stay. I think if the manager wants him to stay, but talk about him a little bit and where he fits in, and it's a segue into what the club might do to help Mikel with the next club.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly just say, guys in the chat, we are seeing you. We're not ignoring you. We can see you. I've got visual issues at the moment, so my cam's not working. MBT, Radovan, haha, you are funny, but we do see you guys. So stay active in the chat there. Going back to Mustafi, Raf, yeah, I don't think it's any secret that a lot of us were very, very disappointed in him. He was pretty error prone. I mean, there's no denying that.
Oh, yeah.
He had a 30 to 35 million pound value. I think that's what we paid for him, 35 million or something, which I actually didn't know that until it started being made a very public thing. I think Gary Neville pointed it out. A couple of other people pointed out. I actually didn't realize we paid that much for him. And I'd even said, I've been guilty of saying myself that he clearly does not warrant that price tag. And that is quite an expensive amount for a defender. I mean, we're not talking other clubs paying 80 million for certain generic centre backs, but for us especially, a 35 million pound price tag for someone that's showing himself to be quite error prone is not our way of doing things, and if we're going to start showing cash, that's not the way. However, under Mikel Arteta, along with Granit Xhaka, Shkodran Mustafi has been one of the most what's the word I'm looking for now, improved players at our club. I mean, he's been the most consistent, I'd say, of the back line, certainly since things turned around. No, exactly. He has. He's been most consistent. He has been most improved. He's showing himself now to be a solidified Premier League centre-back. And, I mean, if Arteta wants him to stay, who am I to argue? I did say, if we can get something for him, let him go. He's not. But now, no, I definitely, I said last week, if there was anyone, it might be a bit controversial, but if there's anyone I would say keep on sort of thing, it would be him. And, I mean, he's definitely for me, proven himself. That's for sure.
All right. You were mentioning some chatter in the chat room. Is there any questions to pull from there that we need to address, should address?
Right now, Tom says, what's up? He's hyped for the game. So are we. And then, as I say, Ryan tells us he's on his way. So can't wait for him to be up in here and join in this chat. As I say, we were asked where my camera is. As I say, I've got some visual issues with my technical issues there.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, and then Radovan says, come on, you Spurs, just kidding. So that's what we've got at the minute. But guys, we can see there are quite a few of you there watching now.
Yeah, so send us we love your comments. Send us your questions too. We're happy to talk about them. Kick them about as a way of bringing you guys into the chat. Love to have you here. But let's talk about Spurs for a moment, because we talked about Arsenal coming in on form. The red card kind of messed this up. They would have won 4. they'd won 3 consecutive going into the COVID break. And really, we can say COVID kind of messed things up because, it took Mikel 2 games to get things kind of congealed again, but now they're kind of back on a run. Spurs have been really up and down since COVID. Their last 3 matches, again, they're all over the place. They had a win. They had a loss. Sheffield United beat them pretty badly, 3-1. They had a 1-0 win over Everton. But what we're seeing about Everton is that there are some clubs that came out of COVID dead, and Everton seemed to be one of them. And then, to carry that into Bournemouth, their last match, which was at home against Bournemouth, a team that's fighting the relegation battle, it went 102 minutes. There was 12 minutes of injury time in the second half. Spurs did not manage a shot on goal the entire match. Mourinho seemed a little agitated. Of course, we know Jose Mourinho. We know his games, and we know, to take nothing at face value. But that club really seems to be wobbling right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about projection, isn't it? I mean, what was it? He went around calling Arsene Wenger a specialist in failure. I mean, he seems to be outdoing himself. He normally waits until the 3rd season for stuff like this. But now it's coming back to bite him in the backside. He tried to stir the pot. It didn't quite come over. Hey, just to point out, Sam, another member of the podcast, is in the chat. Sam Parson. He reckons it's going to be 3-0 to Arsenal.
All right. So thank you, Sam.
Shame you can't be on today, mate. But I know you got some personal stuff there. Good to see you in chat. Yeah. So I mean, he's done that. I mean, to take another leaf out of a former Tottenham manager's book, AVB, the Downward Spiral. I mean, they had, what was it? You said 3-1 against Sheffield United. And then there was a comment by the Arsenal Facebook page admin regarding, how to beat Sheffield United at their ground. And Mourinho seemed a little bit rattled by that after the stuff that, he said throughout his time as a manager of clubs. Then they had the obviously 1-0 win over Everton, but Everton themselves don't seem to be doing too great lately. And then obviously there was, as you said, the 0-0 with Bournemouth. They do just seem to be flapping all over the place. And I think this is a time that we could, all form goes out the window. We said this with a North London derby. It does. It goes out the window. I mean, we could be on a 10-game winning streak. They could be on a 5-game losing streak, and we could end up drawing. It is one of those games, the derby. And this is going to be a very strange one as well because there'll be no fans present. It's going to be the first North London derby in their new home. Well, for the male side. Obviously, the women already went there, and we know what happened with that one. So, I mean, it's the first time that the men's team, the Arsenal first team, has gone out there in this new ground, and it's been without fans. So the atmosphere is going to be a little bit. I don't know who it's going to benefit, to be honest. Mikel says we thrive lately on not having a crowd presence. Tottenham are probably used to having hardly anyone there in their new ground. So I mean it's gonna be a difficult one. But yeah, it will be very, very interesting. They have been flip-flopping a lot lately. So I think it's time to take advantage of that and hit them on the break, definitely.
All right. Let's talk about, so we have a little time to kill before we get a little closer to the match. But we've talked a lot about the midweek news, and I wrote a piece about it that's on our Say by the Bellerin site. We've been chatting about it constantly in our little group. We want to share it with you. News midweek that KSE, Kroenke Sports Entertainment, which is the umbrella company that has all of their properties, bought out some bonds that Arsenal Holding Limited had taken out way, way, way back, and I believe in 2002. And one of them was for, I think it was £205 million. Anyway, it's a bond that covered the construction of the Emirates Stadium, and there was another one for $50 million. They were due to mature in 2029. KSE bought them out early, refinanced them in effect. And we've been trying to discuss what this means for the club. Does this mean the club's on better footing? Does this give the club more freedom? Does this mean they're going to have more money to spend? There's a lot of chatter on social media about it. Our conclusion is, I'm going to bring you in a moment, Dean. This is, we don't know the exact dollar amount. Let's put that up front. But it does seem that it's A, giving the club more flexibility, and B, we expect them to be very, very active We expected them to be active in the summer window anyway. And one of the reasons is, we've done some back of the envelope math, and Dean, I'm going to bring you in. We can do a little crosstalk here. But Arsenal's budget, for all of the talk that they only have 50 million, we started doing math on players that we expect to go out and players that they've targeted to come in. And we'll go into it in detail. I wish I had a slide. We can put it up for you. I'll explain it to you, and Dean can explain it to you. But it seems Arsenal can go after anybody that they want with a net spend of roughly maybe 30 million pounds total. Hop on in and help me out here.
Yeah, so obviously just want to go into what you said. First of all, obviously KSC buying out these bonds early. There are obviously penalties for that. I just want to make a point that there's a lot of straw man arguments sort of being processed for this about whether or not this is going to affect transfers, this is going to this. And I feel the only people that are worrying about whether this is exclusive or solely, connected to transfers are people that play Football Manager or FIFA. It's not about that. We've had to understand first and foremost that as well as being a football club for us, it is a business. All football clubs are businesses. People own them. They are businesses. And however you see it, first things first, you've got to keep the place floating and you've got to keep it in the black. So, money comes to money. So this whole straw man argument about, this isn't going to do anything for transfers, it's irrelevant right now. It is, because that money will come and things will happen with the balance. But yeah, so we were looking at obviously what the media say and what they say, Arsenal only have 45 million, Arsenal only have 50 million in the bank. They're going to have to offload to afford this and this and this. It's been, for example, Partey reported time and time again, we're willing to pay his £43 million release clause, £44 million release clause. So that in itself tells you we have a bit more than that money ready to spend on transfers.
Yeah, and I'm going to butt in for a second. That echoes what we heard last summer. Remember, Nicola Pepe, there's his price tag is 70 million. That Arsenal only has 50 million. There's no way this is going to happen. And then there he was. Go on, please continue. I hear more of the same when I hear that with Thomas Partey.
No, exactly. But it's about amortization, isn't it? And people seem to forget that. They always say, X club wants X amount for X player. Arsenal can't afford that. They only have Z amount in the bank. However, when it comes out, we're signing that player, and obviously amortization comes into it, which every single transfer is pretty much amortized, bar a very small handful. Arsenal are the only club that are reported or talked about. They've had to do it in installments. Installments FC. People just don't seem to get that's how it works. So, then you take into account, we've now lost Mkhitaryan, which I can't remember exactly what you calculated it to be, or we calculated it to be over a year in terms of wages, but he was on 140k a week. So given that if he was going to stay
around £7 million, which is quite significant.
Yeah. Now, given that, obviously, if we'd given him an extra year as well, that would have had to have doubled. So that would have been 280k. So that would have been nearly £14 million. So we've saved a lot of that. El Neni looks to be going. There's talk of 4+ defenders looking to be going. Hector Bellerin has been reported recently as being not convinced now by this current project. So looking at that, looking at the players we've looked, as well as the swaps we've discussed as well. That was another thing that came into it. I know we don't have much time. I'm not going to spread too much on this. But obviously,
I just a teaser. I'm working on a piece on this and put it in front of you. Not only how much they save in transfers or how little they have to spend in transfers, but on the flip side, they're going to clear out, and we'll talk about Mesut Ozil. We don't know if they're going to keep him or not, but there's a chance that Arsenal could clear out 4 of the biggest salaries on their payroll right now, and as many as 5 or 6 of the 10 biggest. And if we look at them, and we'll go into detail on them, I'll go into detail on them in the story. These are players who are no longer starting or playing vital roles. We're no longer really earning their money. So it seems Arsenal's really kind of looked hard at this and said, who's giving us value? And if you're not giving the club value right now, you're on the block.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I was going to quickly pinpoint that you do have this piece coming out, and I thought I'd let you obviously discuss that. But people want to keep an eye on that and wait for that to come out and give that a read, because we're very interested. It'll be more eye-opening than I can obviously talk about, or Raf can obviously talk about here, time-wise. However, talking of sales, swaps, we're looking at, we could bring in, for example, 2-3 defenders, 2-3 midfielders and a forward or two that look to be quite pricey. And as Raf said, after sales, swaps, etc., we're looking at a net spend of less than £50 million, for example. And I mean, that in itself, where Arsenal have only apparently got £50 million, it shuts up shop on this argument.
Bottom line here is, don't worry about the money. I mean, for all the talk that they're in trouble, they can't afford it. We heard that last summer. We know that's not true. And we're saying now it's doubly true, partly because the club doesn't have to spend money. They have assets. If they send Matteo Guendouzi out, that's a lot of money. If they send Hector Bellerin out, he's still young. He has value. Don't simply look at the price tags of people they want to bring in. Look at what the players they can send out do as well. And comfort yourself in knowing, bottom line is, money is not going to be an object this summer. So, let yourself dream big. We are running a little short on time. We're about 5 minutes here from kickoff. Dean, let's talk about the lineup. It's come out. There is a question in the chat. He has, okay, well, there we go. We're looking at the lineup today. Two changes from the last match. Cedric is out at right back. Hector Bellerin is in at right back. But up front, Bukayo Saka, who's played a lot in the last few matches, has been put on the bench for starters. And Nicola Pepe, whose wife had a baby a little over a week ago, or roughly a week ago, is back in the starting lineup. So we're looking at a front lineup of Aubameyang on the left, Lacazette central, Pepe on the right. That's what generated the most chatter because, as we said, Alexandre Lacazette's been struggling and Saka has not. And this is a chance for Saka to go back to his natural position on the left wing and Aubameyang to play in his preferred position up top, and that's not happening. And I'm going to let you take your whacks at this because you've been discussing it. We've been discussing it. Is this a matter of Alexandre Lacazette being put in the shop window, in your opinion, Dean?
As I say, Ryan, I think, mentioned it to us before you and I came on for the live pod here earlier, about how it could be that. I mean, for me personally, I tend to agree. However, I feel it's obviously at the risk and at the detriment of not playing Bukayo Saka. I also think it's at the detriment of possibly injuring Lacazette and giving him no room to go anywhere if he is looking for a move or if we are looking to move him on. For me, this front three is not the correct lineup, and Sam has asked in the chat, do we feel it's the right selection? Should he be in the squad? Personally, I feel yes, he should. I personally feel it should have been a front three of Pepe right, Saka left, Orba up top. The reason for I just feel that's our strongest front three. Orba, I've seen what he's obviously done cutting in from the left, but I just don't feel this game. Considering I don't feel Lacazette's confidence is still there right now. I mean, hopefully he goes on to prove me wrong today. I just don't feel it's the right time to start him. Maybe as an impact sub, but not to start him. And you never know. I do feel it's going to be Lacazette off for Saka at some point with Orba going through the middle. I also feel Torreira should have started with that partnership with Xhaka, but obviously Ceballos has been impressive. So I trust the process. I do trust the process. I do know we're about to probably do our minutes silence for Jack Charlton right now, by the way. And that has been observed. So there we go.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here on Saka before we kick off because I know it's coming right now. But he is still, we forget, he's 18 years old. We saw, let's go back. It's been some time now. What happened to Jack Wilshere when Arsene Wenger really leaned on him heavily that year he came up, and he was also young, and he was vital to the club, and he got injured and being overplayed, arguably. I think this is just a management of rotation. Saka has played a lot, and he's played a lot at left back. He's played on the left wing. Now he's played on the right wing. They played him in the center. I think he's just due a rest. I mean, I think it's just down to that. But, we'll come back in about 45 minutes and we'll look at the decision and see if it was the right one.
Brilliant. Yep, they're just taking the knee and kickoff's about to come. So I guess we'll see you guys at half.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you at halftime. Come back.